The year is 2012. The room is in Des Moines. It smells of hotel coffee and anticipation. Hundreds of farmers are here. They wear caps from seed companies and dealerships. They are the best in the business, the men and women who feed the country. In the third row sits Frank Miller. He is 74 years old, retired now for almost a decade. He ran the John Deere dealership in his county for 40 years. He knows tractors. He knows farmers. He is a respected man, a man whose opinion carried weight. On stage, a professor from Iowa State is giving the keynote. He's talking about soil science, about new methods of conservation tillage. He clicks to a new slide. The slide is a chart, a graph showing 30 years of data, 30 years of rising yields, 30 years of decreasing input costs, 30 years of improving soil health on a single farm. The results are staggering. They are almost unbelievable. Someone in the audience whistles softly. The professor lets the silence hang in the air. He says, "This is the farm that proved it could be done. This is the man who perfected the system." Frank leans forward to read the name at the bottom of the slide. Sam Weatherford. Weatherford Farms. Frank feels something he can't quite name, a tightening in his chest. He knows that name. He knows that farm. The professor continues. He says, 30 years ago, everyone told this young man it was impossible, that his methods were foolish, that he would fail. The room is silent, listening to a story of triumph. But Frank is no longer in the room. He is back in his own office. The year is 1982. A young man, barely 22 years old, stands before him. His face is grim. His hands are stained with grease. He needs a miracle. And Frank, a good man, a kind man, is about to tell him no. He is about to explain, with all the certainty of his experience, that what the young man wants is not just improbable, it is impossible. This channel tells the stories of people who were told no. The quiet workers, the forgotten inventors, the builders who proved the experts wrong. These are the stories you won't find anywhere else, the stories that need to be told. If you believe in that work, if you believe these stories matter, hit the subscribe button. Join us. Because what happened after Frank Miller said no is a story about more than just a broken tractor. It's a story about what happens when you refuse to let someone else's certainty define your future. Let me take you back to April of 1982. The ground was thawing. The air held the damp smell of coming spring. It was the season of hope for a farmer, but there was no hope at Weatherford Farms, only a quiet, heavy grief. Sam's father, Tom Weatherford, was dead, a heart attack at 55, sudden, final. He had been the heart of this place, a man who understood the language of the soil, who could read the sky. Now he was gone. And Sam, at 22, was left with it all. 480 acres of Iowa black dirt, a mortgage at the bank, seed to be bought, and a planting window that was closing with every passing day. His father's boots felt too big to fill. The weight of it was crushing. He had one good tractor, the big one, a John Deere 4440. His father had bought it new in '79. It was the pride of the farm. The engine was strong. The quad-range transmission was reliable. It was the machine that would get the crop in. It was the only machine that could. On a Tuesday morning, Sam was out in the north field, disking the corn stalks from last year, turning the earth over, preparing the seed bed. The 4440 pulled the disc without complaint. The diesel engine hummed its steady song. And then, it didn't. There was a sound, a high-pitched whine that turned into a grinding crunch, a sound of metal screaming, then a loud pop, like a shotgun blast inside the transmission. The tractor lurched to a stop. The engine was still running, but the wheels would not turn. Sam put it in every gear. Nothing. He shut it down. The silence that followed was terrifying. It was the sound of failure, the sound of a season ending before it began. He walked the 3 miles back to the house. Every step was heavy. He knew what it meant. He spent the next day pulling the tractor apart. He was a good mechanic. His father had taught him, but this was beyond his skill. He drained the transmission fluid. It came out full of metal shavings, silver glitter in the dark oil, a sign of catastrophic failure. He pulled the cover plate and saw the damage. The rear planetary gear set. It was chewed to pieces, teeth sheared clean off. The metal was blue from heat. It was the heart of the final drive, and it was destroyed. There was only one place to get a part like that. One man to see, Frank Miller, at the John Deere dealership in town. He drove to town in his father's old Ford pickup. The broken gear set was on the passenger seat, wrapped in an oily rag. It felt like a dead weight. The dealership was a clean, bright place, green and yellow everywhere, the smell of new paint and new tires. Frank Miller's office was in the back. The door was open. Frank was on the phone, but he waved Sam in. Frank was a pillar of the community, coached Little League, served on the church board. He had sold Sam's father his first tractor, and his last one. He was a decent man, a fair man. He hung up the phone and smiled, a sad, kind smile. "Sam," he said, "I was so sorry to hear about your father. He was a good man, one of the best." Sam just nodded. He couldn't find the words. He unwrapped the broken gear set and put it on Frank's desk. The heavy steel part made a dull thud on the wood. Frank looked at it. He didn't need to ask what it was, or what tractor it came from. He knew. 4440, he said. Rear planetary. Sam nodded again. Frank sighed. He ran a hand over his face. "This is a bad one, son. I've seen it before. It's a weak point in that model if you pull too hard in the wrong gear. I need to get the crop in, Frank. I need it fixed. I know you do." Frank opened a large parts book on his desk. He ran his finger down a column of numbers. He picked up the phone to the service manager. "Charlie," he said, "how backed up are we?" Frank listened. His face grew tighter. He hung up the phone. He looked at Sam with genuine pity in his eyes. "This is the problem, son. We have 7 tractors in the shop ahead of you. Big jobs, combines that need engine overhauls, planters that need to be completely rebuilt. It's our busiest time of year. I can't bump you ahead of anyone. They're all in the same boat you are." "I understand that," Sam said, "but when can you get to it?" Frank turned his computer monitor towards Sam. He showed him the service schedule, a calendar filled with names. "The earliest we could even pull it into the shop is 6 weeks from today." 6 weeks. The words hit Sam like a physical blow. In 6 weeks, the planting window would be long gone. The season would be over. The farm would be lost. "What about the part?" Sam asked. "Can I just get the part? I'll do the work myself." Frank shook his head slowly. "That's the other problem." He tapped a few keys on his keyboard. "The part number is AR78531. It's on national backorder. There are none in the regional warehouse, none in the main depot in Moline. The factory is waiting on a shipment of castings from a supplier. The system says, best case, 4 weeks, probably more like 6. Sam just stood there, numb. Frank's voice was soft. He leaned forward, his hands clasped on the desk. He was speaking now not as a dealer, but as a friend of the family, as an elder trying to give good counsel. Listen to me, Sam. I knew your dad for 30 years. He wouldn't want you to kill yourself over this. This is a sign. Maybe it's time to take a step back. There's no shame in it. You're young. You've got your whole life ahead of you. You could rent the land out for a season. Let a bigger operator like the Hendersons plant it. You'd still get income. It would give you time to grieve. Time to think about what you really want. This life, it's hard. It breaks older men than you. I'm not going to be the man who sells you a $4,000 part and lets you work yourself to the bone, only to watch you fail anyway because you got started too late. I'm not going to give you false hope. It was the kindness that broke him. It wasn't anger. It wasn't contempt. It was this gentle, reasonable certainty. Frank genuinely believed he was helping. He was protecting this young man from a painful, inevitable failure. He was saving him. And in that moment, Sam understood. The most dangerous limitation is the one imposed by someone who genuinely believes they are protecting you. Certainty about another person's capabilities, delivered with kindness. It is more damaging than outright hostility, because you cannot fight it with anger. It can only be disproven, and that takes decades of work. Sam picked up the broken part. Thank you for your time, Frank. He walked out of the dealership, past the new gleaming tractors on the lot, each one a promise of power and efficiency, each one a symbol of a system he was not a part of, a system that had just told him he was finished. He drove home. The 20-mile drive felt like 1,000. The broken gear sat on the seat next to him, a monument to his failure. Frank's words echoed in his head. Take a step back. Rent the land out. No shame in it. It was sensible advice. It was logical. Any rational person would take it. The farm was mortgaged. His father had taken a second loan 2 years ago to buy more land. The payments were due every month. Without a crop, the bank would come calling by fall. He would lose it all. Everything his father and his grandfather had built. He pulled into the farmyard. The house was quiet. His mother was in the kitchen, sitting at the old oak table where they ate every meal. She looked up when he came in. She saw the look on his face. She saw the greasy part in his hand. She didn't need to ask what happened. He sat down across from her. He put the broken planetary on the table. He told her what Frank had said. 6 weeks for the part. 6 weeks for the repair. He told her Frank's advice, to rent the land, to give up for a season. He didn't look at her while he spoke. He looked at the deep scratches in the tabletop, marks left by generations of his family. When he was finished, the silence in the kitchen was as heavy as the silence in the field. His mother reached across the table. She didn't say, "It will be okay." She didn't offer false hope. She just placed her hand on his. Her hand was worn from a lifetime of farm work, strong, steady. She said, "Your father had a saying, whenever things got hard, whenever a machine broke or the rain wouldn't come, whenever the bank sent a letter, he would go out to the shop and he would work, and he would say the same thing every time. The work is the only thing that answers. The work is the only thing that answers." It wasn't a solution, it was a philosophy, a statement of faith. Faith in the power of your own 2 hands. Faith that action was better than despair. Sam looked at his own hands, calloused, stained with grease and dirt. He stood up. He picked up the broken gear. He walked out of the kitchen. He knew there was one last chance, a long shot. A name he had heard his father mention, a man in the next county over. A man who didn't sell new tractors, he only fixed old ones. His name was Earl. Have you ever been told you couldn't do something? Not by an enemy, but by a friend. By someone who thought they were protecting you from failure. Someone who had your best interests at heart. What did they tell you that you couldn't do? And what did you do next? Let me know in the comments below. Because what Sam did next didn't just save his farm. It set him on a path that would change his life forever. And it started with a drive down a dirt road, to a place the modern world had forgotten. Earl's shop wasn't on a main road. You had to know where to find it. Down a long gravel lane, behind an old farmhouse. The sign was faded. Earl's Repair. And underneath, in smaller letters, Massey Ferguson. The building was an old Quonset hut, rusted in places. The big doors were open. Sam parked his truck and walked inside. The place smelled of history, of old oil, hot steel, and damp earth. It was dark inside. The only light came from the open doors and a single bare bulb hanging over a workbench. Tools lined the walls. Not new, shiny tools in plastic cases, but old, heavy tools. Wrenches worn smooth by decades of use. In the center of the shop was a massive metal lathe, a relic from the 1940s. And standing at the lathe was a man. He was old, maybe 70, thin and wiry. He wore greasy overalls and a faded cap. He didn't turn around when Sam walked in. He was focused on the piece of steel spinning in the lathe. Shavings of metal peeled off it like silver ribbons. Sam waited. He didn't speak. He knew this was a place where you waited to be spoken to. After a minute, the man shut off the lathe. The high-pitched whine died. He wiped his hands on a rag. He turned around. His eyes were pale blue. They looked right through you. "What do you want?" he said. His voice was gravelly. Sam held up the broken planetary. "I was told you might be able to help me." The old man took the part from him. He held it in his hands. He turned it over and over. He ran his thumb over the sheared teeth. "Deere 4440. He said it like a diagnosis. He didn't ask. He told. Sam nodded. "Dealer says 6 weeks to get a new one." The old man grunted. "Sounds about right. They don't want you fixing things anymore. They want you buying new things." He walked over to his workbench. He laid the part down under the bare light bulb. He picked up a pair of calipers. He started measuring. The diameter, the thickness, the exact angle of the gear teeth that were still intact. He didn't say a word for 10 minutes. He just measured and wrote numbers down on a greasy notepad. Sam stood there, watching. He had never seen anyone work with such intense focus. Finally, the old man stopped. He looked at Sam. "This part is cast iron. That's why it failed. It's cheap to make, but it's brittle. The new part they sell you will be the same. It will just fail again in a few years." "So you can't fix it?" Sam asked, the hope draining out of him. The old man looked at him with a glimmer of annoyance. "I didn't say I can't fix it. I said the part is junk." He walked over to a rack of steel against the wall. He pulled out a long, heavy bar of raw steel. "This is 4140 chromoly. It's what they use to make axles for rock-crawling buggies. It's what they should have used in the first place." He looked from the bar of steel to the broken part. "I can make you a new one, not a cast one, a machined one, from this. It will be stronger than the original. It will outlast the rest of the tractor." Sam couldn't believe what he was hearing. How long would that take? The old man shrugged. "Depends. You gonna stand there and watch, or are you going to help?" And so the work began. For the next 3 days, Sam didn't go home. He stayed at Earl's shop. He slept for a few hours each night on an old cot in the corner. He watched, he learned, he worked. Earl was a master, a craftsman of a dying art. He didn't use computers or digital readouts. He used his hands, his eyes, and a lifetime of knowledge stored in his head. He cut a thick slice from the chromoly steel bar. He mounted it in the giant lathe, and he began to turn it. Slowly, carefully, he shaped the steel, shaving off a few thousandths of an inch at a time. He would stop, measure with the calipers, then cut again. Sam's job was to help, to clean the metal shavings, to keep the cutting tool cool with a constant stream of oil, to listen. Earl didn't talk much, but when he did, it was a lesson. He explained how the shape of the cutting tool affected the finish of the metal. He explained how to listen to the sound of the cut, to know if you were pushing the machine too hard. He said, "These new mechanics, they're just part swappers. They don't know how to make anything. They just know how to read a computer screen and replace a module. They're dependent, and dependency is a cage." By Wednesday evening, he had the basic shape, a perfect, smooth steel donut. Now came the hard part, cutting the gear teeth. Earl had another machine for that, an old milling machine with a special attachment called a dividing head. It was a complex piece of equipment. It allowed him to rotate the gear blank by a precise amount, to cut each tooth at the exact same angle, one tooth at a time. It was slow, painstaking work, hours and hours of it. Sam watched, mesmerized, as the sharp cutting tool bit into the hard steel, carving out the shape of a gear tooth. Then Earl would advance the gear and make the next cut. By Thursday afternoon, it was done. A perfect new planetary gear. But they weren't finished. Now, it had to be hardened. Earl built a small forge using fire bricks and a propane torch. He heated the gear until it glowed a bright cherry red. The color, he said, is everything. Too cool, and it won't harden right. Too hot, and you'll ruin the grain of the steel. He judged the temperature by eye. When it was perfect, he plunged the glowing gear into a bucket of used motor oil. It erupted in a cloud of thick, acrid smoke, a violent hiss. The rapid cooling hardened the steel, making it incredibly strong, but also brittle. So there was one last step. Tempering. He cleaned the gear and placed it in an old kitchen oven he had in the shop. He baked it at 400 degrees for 2 hours. This process, he explained, relieved the stress in the steel. It took away the brittleness, but kept the hardness. On Friday morning, they took it out of the oven. It was a beautiful thing. The steel had a faint straw-colored tint from the heat. It was a work of art. Earl handed it to Sam. It was heavy, solid, perfect. "It will cost you $500, Earl said. Sam reached for his checkbook. Earl held up a hand. "Cash. I don't mess with banks." Sam drove to town, cashed a check his mother had given him, and drove back. He handed Earl 5 $100 bills. Earl put them in his pocket without counting them. "Now," he said, "let's put this thing in." By Friday afternoon, the tractor was back together. Sam climbed into the cab. He turned the key. The engine roared to life. He put it in gear. He let out the clutch. And the tractor moved. It worked. It was Monday when he went to the Deere dealership. It was Friday when he drove his repaired tractor out of Earl's yard. He had lost 4 days, not 6 weeks. He drove straight to the field, and he started disking. The work was the only thing that answers. He got the crop in, just in time. That summer, the rains came at the right moments. The sun shone. And in the fall, he had the best harvest the farm had ever seen. He paid the mortgage. He paid his suppliers. And he had money left over. He bought a used planter from a farm auction, an old International Harvester model. It needed work. Bearings were shot. The seed boxes were cracked. He brought it back to his shop and using the things Earl had taught him, he rebuilt it. He didn't buy new parts. He found used ones. He learned to weld. He learned to fabricate. He made it better than new. Cash. The next year, he did the same with a cultivator. The year after that, a combine. He stopped going to the dealership. He started going to farm auctions, to scrap yards. He learned that a broken machine wasn't an end. It was a beginning, a puzzle to be solved, an opportunity to learn. And this is where the story begins to accelerate, because this is where one man's quiet work begins to compound, year after year. Let me tell you about the next 30 years. By 1985, Sam had paid off the second mortgage. He was debt-free. That fall, his neighbor retired. The neighbor had 80 acres. He offered it to Sam. Sam bought it. Cash. By 1988, he bought another 120 acres from a farmer who went bankrupt buying new equipment he couldn't afford. Sam bought the land and the farmer's broken down equipment. Cash. He fixed the equipment in his own shop. He started experimenting. He read books about soil science, about no-till farming. The conventional wisdom said you had to plow the earth every year, turn it over. But the books said that plowing destroyed the soil structure. It killed the microorganisms. It released carbon into the atmosphere. So he stopped. He built a new kind of planter in his shop, one that could slice through the residue of last year's crop and plant a seed directly into the undisturbed soil. His neighbors thought he was crazy. Frank Miller drove by the farm. He saw the messy-looking fields, covered in old corn stalks. He shook his head. He told the men at the coffee shop, "The boy's going to lose the farm. He's lost his way." But that year, a drought hit. The plowed fields of his neighbors turned to dust and blew away. Their crops withered. But Sam's fields, covered in that protective layer of residue, held the moisture. His crops survived. They thrived. His yields were double the county average. His costs were half. He didn't have to buy fuel for a big tillage tractor. He didn't have to spend weeks plowing. The math was undeniable. By 1992, he owned over 1,000 acres, all of it paid for. Cash. He bought a bigger combine. A used Case IH. He re-engineered the combine head himself, adapting it for his no-till system. By 1998, 2,000 acres. Cash. He built a new, larger shop. He installed his own lathe, his own milling machine. He started teaching other young farmers, the ones who couldn't afford new equipment. He showed them how to fix things, how to be independent. The work is the only thing that answers. By 2005, 3,000 acres. Cash. He was no longer just a farmer. He was an innovator. Soil scientists from the university started visiting his farm. They took samples. They studied his methods. They wrote papers about what he was doing. They called it regenerative agriculture. Sam just called it farming. All this time, Frank Miller watched from a distance. He saw the new grain bins go up. He saw the land acquisitions in the county paper. Weatherford Farms. He heard the talk, the whispers of disbelief that turned into grudging respect. He saw Sam at the co-op. Sam would nod politely, but he never stopped to talk. There was no anger in his eyes, just a quiet, unshakable self-reliance, a distance that Frank's kindness could no longer cross. Frank felt something he couldn't quite name. It wasn't regret, not yet. It was a deep and profound confusion. How could he have been so wrong? He was a good man. He knew tractors. He knew farming. His certainty had been based on a lifetime of experience, and it had been worth nothing. The reckoning came in 2011, a year before the conference in Des Moines. Frank was long retired. The dealership was run by his son, but Frank still owned his family's farm. A few hundred acres his son tried to manage on the side, and his son was struggling. He was deep in debt. He had followed the conventional path. He had bought the new, bigger equipment, the tractors with GPS and satellite guidance, the combines with yield monitors that cost more than a house. He had a massive operating loan from the bank, and the rising cost of fuel and fertilizer was eating him alive. One of his big tractors was down, a newer John Deere model. The transmission had failed. The dealership, his own family's dealership, had told him it would be a $30,000 repair, and it would take a month to get the parts. Frank's son was on the verge of bankruptcy, of losing the farm that had been in their family for 100 years. So, Frank swallowed a lifetime of pride. He got in his truck, and he drove out to Weatherford Farms. The place was transformed. The old barn was still there, but next to it stood a massive, modern machine shop. The yard was neat, lined with equipment, used but impeccably maintained. Sam was in the shop. He was 51 years old now. His hair was graying at the temples, but he was lean and strong. He was welding a crack on a cultivator shank. He shut off the welder when Frank walked in. He lifted the helmet. His eyes were the same, quiet, steady. Frank. He said the name without surprise, as if he'd been expecting him for 30 years. Sam. Frank didn't know where to start. He looked around the shop, the lathe, the mill, the rows of tools. "This is quite a place you've built." Sam just nodded. He waited. Frank finally found the words. "My boy is in trouble, Sam. He's about to lose our place. He's got a tractor down, a transmission. The dealership, they want a fortune to fix it, and they can't get to it for a month." Frank's voice broke. "I was wondering if maybe you could take a look at it, or tell us what to do. I'll pay you, of course, whatever you ask." The silence stretched on. Sam picked up a wrench from the workbench. He turned it over in his hands. He wasn't looking at Frank. He was looking at the wrench. Finally, Frank couldn't stand it anymore. He said, "I was wrong, Sam. That day in my office, all those years ago, I was wrong. I should have helped you. I should have found a way. I was just trying to—" Sam held up a hand, stopping him. He looked at Frank, directly, and there was no anger in his face, no triumph, only a deep, quiet sadness. "You weren't wrong, Frank," he said it softly. "Everything you told me was true, based on the world as you knew it. The part was on back order. Your shop was full. If I had followed your rules, I would have failed. You were just certain, and you made me certain too." He paused. He let the words hang in the air. "You made me certain that I could never again depend on anyone else's system, on their parts, on their schedule, on their permission. You made me certain that the only person I could rely on was myself, and the only answer was the work." He put the wrench down. "I should probably thank you for that." It was the quietest, most devastating thing Frank had ever heard. It was not an accusation. It was a statement of fact, a final accounting. In that moment, Frank understood the true cost of his well-intentioned certainty. He hadn't just refused to fix a tractor. He had refused to see a person. He had put a limit on a young man's potential, and in doing so, he had forced that young man to build a world where he no longer needed him at all. "Tell your son to haul the tractor over here," Sam said. "We'll take a look at it. There's no charge." Sam didn't just fix the tractor. He taught Frank's son how to fix it. He spent a week with him in the shop. showed him how to diagnose the problem, how to find a used part, how to rebuild the transmission himself. He gave him more than a repair. He gave him knowledge. He gave him independence. And this is the final piece of the story, the legacy. Because a person's success is not measured by what they build for themselves. It is measured by what they build for others. Sam started a scholarship fund, not for kids going to a 4-year university to study agriculture, but for kids going to trade school, to learn to be welders, machinists, diesel mechanics, the people who know how to make things and fix things. He mentors young farmers. He has an open-door policy at his shop. Anyone who wants to learn is welcome. He created a website, an online library of old repair manuals. He scans them and posts them for free, so that a farmer in Nebraska or a mechanic in Brazil can find the information they need to fix a 30-year-old machine. He is fighting against a world that wants you to be dependent, a world that believes old things are disposable, and that the only solution is to buy something new. On the wall of his office, in a simple wooden frame, hangs a broken piece of metal, an old planetary gear set. The teeth are sheared off. The metal is blue from heat. Sometimes a young farmer will ask him what it is. Sam will look at it, and he will say, "That is the most important part on this entire farm. It's the part that taught me that the most expensive thing in the world is believing someone who tells you what you can't do, even if they're trying to be kind." Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is standing in an office, in front of a desk, and a kind, well-meaning person is telling them no. They are explaining, with perfect logic and genuine concern, why their dream is impossible, why their plan is flawed, why they should take a step back, give up, be realistic. This story is for them, the ones who walk out of that office, not with anger, but with a quiet, cold certainty. The certainty that they are on their own, and the work is the only thing that answers. If this story means something to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it, someone who is facing their own 6-week delay. Thank you for listening.